Well, good morning, everyone. You have even come in spite of coronavirus and parental pains and families that are haunting us to this Rooted Coronavirus edition. We are even given some suggestions for changing the logo of the RootedCon. Please, organization, take note of this. This will be something for this year. Something mixed, like you can see there. The presentation I'm going to make is WinTriage, which is a tool specific to perform triage. I'm going to explain what it is, but those who suffered me last year on room 18 on how to conduct triage on Linux, this is a tool which has been self-developed. It's developed by us, but it arises from other tools, which comes from systemd, and use system helpers. If something works, just use it and support yourself on those things. It's the tool of the DFIRer. The DFIRer, I don't say it oftenly. It is a digital forensics incident response, and the DFIRer is the person who conducts these DFIRers. What we usually find, this picture, it's reused from last year. I think Monica, good morning. This is a picture from last year in which we can find in a safety response like this, a fire, something that is urgent, something that is burning. That client is always priority, but we have to get with our car. This is hackable as the one we use, even more because it's older, and we have to get there with a suitcase and a series of tools. In general, in those cases, you know what you're going to do. You have to go there with your generic kit and have a colleague's phone on hand and a Telegram channel to say, well, I'm in this problem, what do I do? So, this year, what I'm going to do is focus on Windows, even if it's quite similar, more or less, it's almost the same to any other operating system. What we're going to do, depending on the status on which we find the computers that we will need to manage, we will have to decide what we will take with us. Probably most of you have suffered me in another speech, which goes defining Windows, what do I take with me? It was a workshop, and it was about deciding what are you going to extract from a machine and what you're going to analyze. I'm going to separate colleagues from CB. We're talking about a framework that they use, which does both things. I wasn't in the speech, I'm really sorry, but it does both things. Triage from one side, and it also serves to conduct analysis and parsing of the content to understand what has happened. What I'm going to present now, it's just the extraction phase, the evidence extraction phase, and how to automate it in Windows based on something that has been done already. I want to make a difference between two different states of the same machine. On a live machine, one of the things that we find a system is to preserve the status in which it is. If it's turned on, don't turn it off, and if it's turned off, don't turn it on. In any other cases, if you do what you are supposed to do, you lose evidences. So, when the machine, the computer, is alive, with a tool or with several tools or many tools, the main thing is to know what do you want to extract from the computer. Understand the case. It's not the same compromised machine, computer that you don't know if it has malware or it's just a provatory purposes case to say that a person connected to this computer and left a file or took a file. That's different things. And what we have to do is to run something that let us extract evidences or artifacts that we will analyze afterwards in another computer, in other environments, in other systems, in a laboratory. How are we going to obtain those artifacts from that system? As we said in Linux last year, in Windows, we're going to do it following a volatility criteria. What it's lost first or what is contamined first, we take it away first. Of course, our execution of commands or our tools in order to work need to be loaded in the system, and that will take some room. if there was something in there, we're going to override that, and we're going to lose the possibility of accessing that content. Therefore, first we have to take the memory. We have the memory at certain time in the past in which nothing had happened, apart from what the client has done, but which probably are many bad things for the computer. Maybe the Recuba, using Recuba because I thought that they thought they could use it. That happens. First of all, we take away the RAM memory. After that, the usual thing is to execute some commands to extract elements like connections of the system, open ports, processes, the tree processes, users, etc. So we're going to obtain with system commands, sending text files, some results that is vulnerable to all kind of rootkits, impersonations of binaries that give us information about the system, everything except for the one that the bad guy wanted to hide. That's it, and that's normal. But if that point didn't happen, we have a series of text files with information that could be useful to identify what's going on in that system. That is, as an incident, in an incident, what the most important thing is the short time that we have and the client pushing us on. Is it ready? Is it ready? Is it ready? Is it fixed? You have identified what has happened. That's what's going to happen. You need to be efficient in time. If obtaining things in text files, why you get crazy thinking that the bad guy comes from Ukraine or from Romania or whatever? It's something stupid. It was someone who let admin user open, made a PHP upload to somewhere, and from that he had a lot of something that he had exploited. Well, there's a lot of things that can be done, but without getting too crazy about it. So we execute commands and we send the results to files. From that, what do we want to take? We want to take artifacts. Artifacts are everything that afterwards can be analyzed, and we're going to obtain activity that has occurred in the computer, system artifacts that have occurred in the machine, but we can blame a specific user, that's user artifacts, but also what has happened that has happened in the file system. So why do I take? Three things. Why? Because many times what Windows records is not as what the system can register. Some of the artifacts registered by the system are generally done because of usability, to see which software was run, or to identify a crash or whatever. But for us, it's useful, a prefetch, to identify that executable file was executed in that system, even if we don't know who executed, because it's a system artifact, not a user artifact. So we're going to take all these. Afterwards, we're going to parse all these evidences, analyze them, and cross information to obtain a timeline of what happened in the system, which traces were left in the system, in the file system. That's awesome. File system is awesome, but many people consider it's the last thing. But file system, it's great. If you learn to handle a master file table, that's incredible. A master file table on log file or a journal, if you understand it properly, it's very useful to know where to look for, because in a Windows computer, everything can install everything. So it's very complicated. So we're going to extract that evidence that we will analyze with all the tools afterwards. If the machine is shut off, I can create a copy of the disk, and I analyze that image of the disk, as long as it's not encrypted, to see exactly the same, to obtain certain evidences. Of course, I'm not going to obtain RAM memory, command execution with dead machine. I cannot execute commands on it, but I can obtain certain artifacts to reach the previous point, let's say. Which tools do we have to do the first part, live response? Extracting evidences for afterwards assessment. Everyone creates its own tools, his own tools or her own tools. There are some free of open source. For instance, Windows Live Response, which is from VMware Labs. It's because the name is given for Windows, for Linux, for Mac, for everything. There are scripts that are made in batch that run things in a certain sequential way and calls and other tools at the same time, so that's perfect. It obtains things. That's fine. Then we also have IR triage. It's another tool that descends from triage ER. As you can see, people are very creative when putting names to the tools. It's another free project that obtains other things. It has 1,000 options and obtains other information. Let's see the good parts and the bad parts of each one. We have also CYLR. It's very, which is it's very fast, but sometimes it just blocks. It just freezes. It's fast, of course. It's obtained for things like that. I can also be fast. If you want to reach a leverage level, if it's to win a race, we will use CYLR. But if we want to obtain more, we will other tools. For instance, we have IR triage or Bremer Labs, but now we can use another tool. As I said, Bremer Labs has this look, Windows Live Response. Jaime, which is around here, he did also DAWF, which was another tool, a similar tool to what I'm going to present, but he just called Nearsoft tools. I think all of the ones that were available. He obtained a little thing, but for me, knowing the stored password of Firefox, it's not what I actually need to solve a case. Maybe I need to look for it afterwards, but at first, that's not what I need. Windows Live Response has 3 options. I see 6, but they are the same in secure and non-secure. They are the same. The difference is that the 3 on the top generate a file which is compressed with a password that you can send it through a way, and another way the password. In any case, it has 3 operating modes. Triage, which is just executing a series of system commands, obtain some artifacts from user and system file, and let us with just a structure of files. We also have memory dump, which is the same, but previously it dumps memory, which is nice. And then we have complete. And apart from memory dump triage, it does an image of DXC in 0ES0X or any endings using another tool, which is IFTK Imager version CLI. Be careful with this, because if you are doing the image of a C disk and you run this from C disk, it's an inception, because in the end it fails completely. You only have to do it from a connected unit, which is connected remotely or directly to the victim system that we're going to analyze, of course. This is a look of IR triage. The story is that they are very similar, and it lets you choose a series of things about what you want to extract. As you can see, network information. In the end, it runs commands, it puts it in files, and that's it. System, it takes the log, the registry. That's interesting. As I said, DAWF. We can also have CAPE with K. That's another tool developed by Eric Zimmerman, if I'm not wrong, but it's not something fast and easy. The big button principle, which is easy and fast, is a concept that was Homer Simpson proof. It has to just connect it, and it runs itself. He didn't trust that the person who just had to push the button. They didn't rely on the user doing this button, pushing this button. That's what people want, and it's quite sad that people don't want to understand how things work beyond that, because they just want to just click, wait, and I will send the report to the client, the invoice, everything. Okay, that's it, and you're expert now. That's what I want to avoid. So, it's true that when extracting, we want to extract, but when we try to analyze, we will talk about that later. What do I think that's wrong about this? What is the error of these tools? You know, I like Captain America. What's the problem? What's the thing that they don't do? Windows Live Response makes some mistakes, to my opinion, that shouldn't happen in a forensics tool. One of the things that we try to do when extracting information from a system is to just don't get the machine dirty. Live response install Win pickup nmap visual C. Why do you install all that in a system? Because there are tools that will depend on that. In my opinion, it's like they want to make it as proper as possible. It's not very selected. You have three options, or use run commands, or extract the or I dump the memory, or I obtain an image of the file system of unit C in EOXX files. IR triage, it has also some fails. It obtains many things. It's very selective, maybe too much. But the problem is that it runs, I put it with an asterisk because it's by default. It has many options, and then if you go to the last one, generate a GSM5 of one of the evidences that you have obtained. And apart from that, it runs mftdump against the master file table that he has obtained, and it runs Red Reaper, which is inside with the plugins that were inside, over the hives of the registry, Windows registry, and the things that he has obtained, which is cool, but it's not good at the moment you are performing an instruction, and it's done by default. It's true that you can create a configuration file that prevent it from doing it, but in my case, in my opinion, that shouldn't happen. Apart from that, it allows to obtain information from shadow copies. It's not defined by default, but you can choose that. It shows that there are shadow copies that are not existing. There are like a number at the end of the object, window copy, shadow copy 1, 3, 2. In the end, that's if you don't have the number 1, number 8, it shows that you have 8. For me, that's a bug instead of a bad functionality, but the tool doesn't receive support from 2012 or 2014. It's complicated. NTuser.dat from user, the part of the user registry that stays in documents and settings on the users, the number of users, that file are called like user low-1, and who's that? Who's who? Windows live response at least obtains that and says administrator low-1. That's what we expect. And then on the other hand, the exe file is 14 megas. You want to contaminate as less as possible. You are putting a big file in the memory, which, as mentioning Marcos Reza, he made a post on memory dumping and used many tools that were used to extract memory, and how many of those tools contaminated the memory. And as we said on the forensics group, this is good, but in the end, you're occupying as much as you can. But if you know that if that operating system blocks and freezes and there's a blue screen when you dump the memory, they want to use the one that occupies the least, but the one that works actually. So let's begin. Having seen that, and considering that we had the option of being able to do something that could be of interest, I read in a summer project, which I actually need time to elaborate, to create a tool which is called WinTriage, which is not too complicated as you can see, which was modular. But to a certain extent, that is, that it had more options than Primer Labs, but it had less options and many things, and less many things than a expert that I know, and had many less options. So it had to be modular. In which programming language? It will be in Perl. Yes and no. Perl, in the end, is a programming language which is great for scripting. It works on Linux, on Windows. The problem is if I want it to work anywhere and to be an exe file, Perl 2 exe, we will introduce a Perl interpreter, and it will be a huge executable file. So I wanted to have the least memories need. I switched to Autoit. How many of people here know about it? Autoit is a programming language which is awesome. Awesome, really awesome. It's integrated with Windows. It's for Windows. It works perfectly. It calls libraries directly to DLLs and DLL functions on Windows in a perfect way. Other good things. So it's cool. And it's obvious. Another interesting thing for me was to find where does the compatibility of the tool start. From Windows 7 and later versions, the position and many artifacts and the existence changes, except if we are on XP or 2003. So the biggest problem that we had there is that where do we start from? In the end, what I did is to evaluate which system we usually analyze. You won't believe it, but even if you don't believe it, there are still Windows XP and 2003 with IDE disks. A year ago that happened to me. So Windows XP and 2003. Why did I stop there? Because I wanted to stop there. What happened when I had the tool already developed? Someone called me someone called me and told me that I had a security incident. We have a tool for that. Okay, to which it was Windows 2000. It was like a month ago. So I downloaded Windows 2000. I installed virtual machine. Everything exploded there. So I created a compilation tool that supported Windows 2000 for the generation of executable, and I achieved, and it works. But as long as you click on triage, it blocks. So that's the end of it. Apart from that, I want to have support for 32 and 64 bits, not only because of my executable file, but also for everything that my executable will call for, and that need to generate something and not creating crap. I also wanted to have this GUI and CLI GUI for this expert, and CLI for other people that don't want to take that much. Also, we want to create another pod that we discussed with some colleagues to get Windows Live Response, and instead of doing it on a live system, obtained all the guts from a system disk system or a file system that belonged to a C partition. So I said, we haven't achieved to do this in Windows Live Response because it was very complicated. So in the end I said, well, I'm going to just approach it in an offline mode for live response and offline. So having an image, more or less, I'm able to extract those artifacts equally. Another thing that I wanted to obtain is the digital certification of evidence. This is very cool, to call the notary and give me an appointment for this later. And when I get to the notary, what I wanted to extract, it's not there anymore. That's true. And in the end, so I decided to obtain this certification of what I saw at a certain time and verify that existed. Well, I looked for an integration with something that allowed me to certify digitally all the evidences, all the digital evidence that I found. It has a look like this. We're going to see it over.
And as you can see, it allows you to choose live machine or offline system, and you can compress and hash. It generates a single file, and also you have the possibility of generating a digital evidence certificate, which might not be as valid as the notary. Well, but between nothing and a notary, I think, or something and a notary, I think this is a good option. So, and this is what I can choose. By default, as you can see, we have memory, execution of the command pile, alternate data streams, all the MFTs, the registry of all types, events, prefetch events that are not only VTX, compatible with Windows XP and Windows 2003, prefetch, set to puppies, with artifacts. Well, so the thing is that everything that we connect with the USB leaves information inside user information. And what does it get from users? Well, the 4 types of browsers, and all information from each one of the profiles that you may have inside, among other things. recycling basket, the SRAM, information about impressions. For instance, one person wanted to know if somebody in the company had sent for printing something, and it had been a lot of paper. So the thing is, at the end, a lot of the printing jobs that failed stayed at a specific spool file, and so you can collect them. And then something interesting. Shadow copies, I bring out everything that I can bring out on a live mode, and you can get the same thing for every shadow copy. And if the machine has an active directory, it can also get out the ntds.dip, and here I have to thank Divinet who helped me out with this part, because I was talking to him and saying I'm trying this and that, and it came out corrupt, and then we had to fix it in some way, and he said this is how I did it, and it works. So, and I said I'll talk about you in the rooted. And then there's the option of getting an image from the C partition. Since you can do it, no problem. So by default it's not there, but you can do it. So this is a battle card of what both things do. You can see the RAM capture or the system registry is in all three, and the triage is also available in all three. And so I've seen what each one of them brings out, and based on that I say this one is of interest, this one isn't, and I want to have exactly what the other two do, and on top of that I want to have those things that I found that I needed at some point and the other two haven't been able to provide. So here you can see the memory, system registry, users, command execution, persistence events. You can get EVTX, the prefetch, the journal that you can see further down. Only by Windows, and WinTriage doesn't get the journal, the shell page from user. So these ones get the MWF, and if you send to print and hash, because I prefer, if I'm in a hurry, I don't want hashing or anything, just get it out and start analyzing. If I can do it leisurely, then I set it to print and a single hash, and that's it. Logic unit images in WinTriage and Windows don't respond, and then you can see that the index.dat is not in anti-triage or ER triage, which is common in this case is common for Internet Explorer. So it's about playing with what each one of them gets out and say implement, and on top of this, whatever I needed. And the only one that gets information from the recycling bins, because the recycling bins you're not going to believe, but people send the document to the recycling bin, and they believe it's deleted, and then they say, oh, it's not deleted, and then they recover it, and then they press, they delete directly, but the information about the size of that file, where it was, and the date when it was deleted still stays. Failed prints, forward sent registry. This has been very helpful in many cases, and it's always been very funny. Put mails. It's something that I haven't seen anybody else being able. Activities cache for Windows 10 and for certain versions of Windows 10 that have execution in CLI. So this is demo time. So what is it that we have? I have a few virtual machines. So we have a Windows Server 2012 R2, and this is the compiling environment. As you can see, it generates a WinTriage 64, depending on where we are, what type of system. I can recover one or the other. It takes up 1 mega, so that's okay. And the first thing it does is to tell us, watch out. you're going to start the engine. Have you got your seatbelt on? Because one of the problems we have when we start it is that the machine has anti-malware, and these tools, as Jaime has said in his presentation, and live has already, I've told you often that the RootedCON2020, for instance, done with Autoid, many tools, and even our own WinTriage often detects it as malware. So the first thing it tells you is the machine doesn't have an anti-malware machine, or I do not know if it's there. So I check if in the Windows security we say that the machine has an anti-malware, then you get an alarm so that you generate an exception so that you can disable it, because you want to allow this tool to make its job. So as I've said, there is this module button. This is what we've seen earlier on. The module menu, you can choose what you want, all, but all deliberately does not include image. And if I press here, it says you have selected a C partition image, and it says it's too big, so it warns me about what I am planning to do. So what does it do? I say everything in this case, in this version, and there we are. And here I thank my colleague Miguel Ángel Lara, who has helped me with the testing part, and particularly with a specific tool where his work works better than the alternate data stream that Mirto uses, that used to crash with Windows 8, if I'm not mistaken. So at the end, he ended up doing his own, and that's it. Thanks very much. So as I'm saying, tools that we have in a Windows 2012. I'm going to try with the Windows 2003, so you can see that it's true, because people don't believe it. And in this case, I'm going to remove a prior execution. I'm going to execute the 32-bit one. I've been unable to identify if the system has older malware, and if so, please disable it. We select everything, and we press triage. As you can see, it's bringing out a log of everything it's doing on the one hand, and it generates a directory that has on the one hand the log of everything that's being executed, and on the other hand something that's of interest for me, and there are some things failing here, but as we will see in a different page, does the current system that you are analyzing file system that's encrypted? Because if so, if you do an image, you're going to take out an image of absurd things that you will not be able to decrypt or read afterwards. And if you have a volume that belongs to WannaCry or WhatCry, you want to be able to understand what that person was up to within that subscribed file. So as I was saying, this is one of the first things it's going to warn us about. Be careful. And in fact, I use a tool from Magnet Forensics, which is okay, but it doesn't test or detect everything. So in the end, I implemented different ways of detecting everything of interest and identify whether a specific file is a container or not. As you can see, enjoy your triage. Now you have to analyze, take it somewhere else, and if you have suggestions, let us know. So the tool is free, so you'll be able to play with it. And what does it bring out? Well, first of all, a memory dump at the beginning. That's the 1 giga that we had here, and then reports. We're talking about TXT files where we see the execution, the command's execution, but something that I was missing in other tools is that it didn't at any point in time show which account had been executed. For instance, this file tree, first of all, it tells me I've executed this, and what has been generated is this. So for each thing that I execute, that the tool is going to execute, executed command got us this and this other command. So this is a type of the John. So it tells me what we're seeing, because a lot of times people believe that, what did it do, and we don't know. So the idea is that we are able to understand what's being executed. So it executes these TSV files, TXT, and we get all of that information. And then we go to evidences. What do we have in this machine? We have events in NVT, because these were in Windows System 3212, where they share the whole event registry. The ETL, there are none, but it generates the file NFT, and we get the three things from the NFT that we will have to analyze later on, and the log file, the journal, the bins, if there's something, and it's there in a format that we can access later on. And in this case, as you can see, this is an old bin, which is the way these bins were generated in these very early options, 2003, etc. And then user information. In this case, there's only an administrator. We get the anti-user and all of the log files, which are transactional for the anti-users, and for the system registry. Browser information. In this case, I think there's only Chrome. We get the cache, the cookies, and the history, and we can take that elsewhere and analyze it with the right tools. So this is in 2003, and we say, okay, it works, great, and that's it. But I have here a Windows 10. Let me check that it's still there. And specifically here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute it. Of course, it escalates on its own, and I can do it myself. And here we have found anti-malware in the system. So we have to be careful. So the advice is to disable it to be able to do the triage. So, excuse me, as I was saying, so we've detected some anti-malware, so you should disable it to resume. And what I'm going to do now is to disable the anti-malware. Of course, I get out and go back in, and then it doesn't say anything else. So I detect an anti-malware, but it also tells you that you can execute. Okay, modules, more of the same. I want to get out only the register. And what I'm going to say is I want it to send it as a warrant. So it caches and it sends it. I want to send it e-guarantee. So I want to get, this is simple and easy to take out. And what it does is it generates a file in this desktop.zip, and it says we're ending with the e-guarantee of the evidence. So it has generated today at 13:17. The other test is from yesterday. What it has generated is a compressed file of this specific file, and here it has generated a file which is this SHA file, and if I edit that, we see that in this file has this hash. And as you can see, I've already received an email signed by e-guarantee that has just come in and brings attached a PDF document. And what it says is in this G stamp is that the file, that's the hash of the file that contains my hash. So from this file, it takes out the hash, which is this. This SAH1 and the SHA256, and the content that was there is included in here. So as you can see, this is the content, the hash of what I have. So it's a notary that certifies that there is a hash at a date and at a certain time, because that's what the notary does, because he doesn't understand anything that's going on. And if in this file we can, from this file, we estimate the hash with hashMyFile, which was this one, what it brings out, that the SHA1 is this one, the 45 out of 39, which is here, and this 25 whatever, which is here. So it's good enough to prove that the content of that file, imagine that it gets out 40 gigas of whatever, and I send all of that to Garante. Well, Jago comes here and beats me up. That cannot be done. So what we do in the end is to send only on the basis 64, which is what you need to send to Garante of the content that you have to hash, and that's what it does. So we have one more way of extracting evidence and having them certified, because there is a date and an hour, certified by a third party, which, yes, it is not a notary, but if between nothing and that, that's better. So the next thing I'm going to try, I can remove 203, 210 as well. This one I'll deal with later. And here I have a server 2019. I'll bring it back. And this one specifically, I have one F unit triage. And I have a unit called this one I did with command line. There is an E unit. Can you see it? That has a lock. And this is not because of the router, but because it locked. And it is encrypted with BitLocker, and within these cositas or little things, there is a unit hidden.tc and this other one below. And they are really mounted with these funny names, but they are here. And in this triage unit, what I'm going to do is the machine is a domain controller. It has shallow copies. And one of the users has executed CCleaner. Something quite interesting. So as you can see, we execute the WinTriage 64 version. It says it doesn't know whether there is an anti-malware. And this is tough because this could not access or could not do this task. So I'm going to ask it to remove shadow copies, Active Directory, and user information. And I press triage. But there's something I wanted to test. Sorry, I repeat. So I want to do command execution, user information, shadow copies, and Active Directory. So first thing, it searches for encrypted volumes, and let's see what it finds. It tells me the EDD has been executed, so the D unit is encrypted with the locker, the Bellacrypt is being executed, and the price, and that the H unit has been encrypted with the Bellacrypt and the J as well. So before anything, this unit indeed is encrypted with BitLocker, And this is what BitLocker generates as a recovery key. So one of the things that WinTriage executes, see that the WinTriage.log tells us everything that's being executed and what it looks like. And one of the things that's left is in reports. There is a file called bitlocker.txt, and if there's something encrypted with BitLocker, it gives us the recovery key, so we could pull from that rope and access the content of the physical image done from something that was encrypted. So we would have the key, and on the other hand, there is a driver encryption from TXT, which is the result of what the MD has generated. And as you can see, it says that the age has been encrypted, but Veracrypt is not updated. Why not? Why don't they change that Vera for Trump? In my case, it did detect it, and so this is still going on, and I'm going to leave it running, and then we'll be back. Or I can even show you one with an execution from yesterday, where we see there's a disk included. You can see that indeed it has generated the disk image, and this because it's been done from an external unit to the C partition. It generates the disk unit, but it takes 18 minutes. That's why we cannot do it live. So this is for 2019. I'm going to leave it running, and I'm going to move on to Windows 2012, where I want to show you how we can also do that on top of an offline system. Of course, I go to offline system, and it says, what do I set up? It's not about transferring an image, but before that, you have to do a setup of an image. For instance, with our Mouch Mountain and our Navaja Negra, I pick an image that I have here of a Windows 10 specifically, and it has generated a E unit with the Windows 10. So what I do now is to say, and in the offline system, and we see the D unit, and which modules do I want? I can't ask for the memory or the command executions or shadow copies. It's also impossible because that's from the live machine and the C partition. We're starting from a C partition image, so I don't need much more. So I press the R, and as you can see, it's taken things out of this offline system. In everything else that we have seen, it generated a folder that had as a directory name the host name of the machine, date, hour, etc. And in this specific case, what it generates is an offline system, name of the unit, date and time when it's doing it, and at the end, the same thing. Evidence, for instance, because I've asked for events and DL files, if present, MPT, there are the 3.1 from the NFT, the bins of the users, and there won't be reports. Because in an offline system, we have everything here included. Users, we get all of the users with the anti-users, recent files, but Office files. In this case, there aren't any, and browser information, cache, history, and cookies. So it says it's done, and we can get all of this information in an offline system as well. So I go back to 2019, which must be around here, and yes, it's also done. And it tells us that it's found encrypted file systems mounted, so you have to review the file driver so it warns you before you close, because that has happened in the past. And here we have shadow copies. For instance, if we go, this is a machine from a couple of users which are sure and shadow, and in the sure specifically, we see that there are no recent files from Office, and in fact there are no recent files, but if we go to the shadow copies, For instance, number 1, users. And here we see that he's been using his agenda, etc., reasons from office, documents, etc. So we're able to get the same information, both live and in shadow copies for each shadow copy that the system has. Okay, I see I'm running out of time. So we've seen this, and this integration with eGuarantee, and then we have the command line mode. Basically, you execute this with the -G or question mark, and there's a flag for everything if you want, or a -today, or -all, -drive. It also estimates the space and it brings it out. So we have seen before that this tool, one of the things that it has is that it's supported by different tools, all of this, and most of them cannot be distributed. You have to download them. But there's a very nice file called readme first command, which basically tells you all of the help information and where things come from. If you have an eGuarantee account, for the stamping service, and what's the default option with WinTriage, this file, the tools directory, which is empty or empty with the ADS Securitame that Miguel did, and we can distribute it because Miguel is okay with that. And all of the other tools, where you should get them from and what you should call them within the directory. And this is a bit of a pain, but we have to do it. Thanks to the licenses, which are based on this, really. So specifically, these are the tools that you need to have running behind, and these are the dependencies on what you should leave them like. The raw copy, I use one, an older one, but it doesn't work in 2003. So if you're gonna use it in 2003, there are some prior requirements. Mario Guerra told me recently that he'd seen in GitHub a tool that's called WinTriage. It's only 4 years old, so it can't be the case. So where is it? We haven't had the time actually to put it in the distributable mode, but we will post it in Securitame blog, explaining the material of today's talk and what things should look like at the end, and finally where to download it from. But this is to do with the legal issue, and you know that the legal issue is always slower than the technical stuff. So this is about it, and this is in case anybody wants to join us to the training with them in Securitame. And other questions?
We are open to any questions or to add any feature that you are interested in. I want you to test it afterwards. First of all, just congratulate you for this great tool. It's spectacular. I think that you're going to make life easier of those who are going to use it in the future. Apart from that, I don't know if I lost the part in which you mention from which unit did you run or do you run the tool. The recommended thing is to execute it from an external unit, from the device, from maybe a pen drive or a USB hard disk. I practically use it from C in all cases, but except for Windows 2019, just to make a C unit test, I cannot do a C test on a C test. So in line with what you just mentioned, my question is, have you considered the fact that the writing in USBs have a high memory consumption? No, but I cannot think of another way of doing it, because doing it in other places, in the disk itself, may invalidate evidences that are from the machine itself, but never in disk C. but writing in a remote unit, for instance, you could do it, you could, except for the memory dumping, but in the end you have to create a unit, a letter unit. I ask it because I reference to the Philip Polster book, which is a very fine book that just put some nuances to that aspect. It's just a suggestion. I really appreciate, because every suggestion is welcome. And once again, congratulations. Any other question? I understand that it was a sniffer or something like that, and you have to get a driver or using a tab or in the network interface to make a traffic capture of the machine itself when it's working. In the Linux DFIRer part, the other tool does it, but because we assume that, well, we're going to be doing it for, since a unit that has TCP dump, in this case you would need WinTech initially, or ND's driver that is available too, or with raw sockets. I haven't done that, or with NetSH. Now that I think of it, but in the end, I haven't done that actually. But with ATCH, you don't generate a pickup. There's an utility from Nearsoft that does it, which is useful for you, but I haven't tested it. But yeah, it's a good idea. We note it down. Thank you very much. Any other question? No? Yes? Okay. So that should be it. Thank you very much.